So let's begin. The topic today that we're going to discuss is advanced microdynamics. Thank you for all your donations. The money that we collected will go to Acción por la Música. It's a Spanish charity that supports children in need with their musical education. If you want to discover a bit more about it, you can check it on their website. The total amount we collected is 423 euros. I mean, that's substantial. So thank you again, everybody that donated. If you don't know who I am or what I do, my name is Ruslan. I go by Slatin. Slatinize is my Instagram tag. Many people know about me there. And I've been working in music since like forever. Since I remember, I was really passionate about anything related to sound. Maybe because my father also was a musician, and I think like some genetically some stuff was passed through. But I've been working in music since I was like around 12. I was playing in metal bands, and then I transitioned to hip hop, then transitioned to electronic music producing. It's a long journey. And through this 17 years now that I'm working in this professionally, these are the labels that I work with. These are some of the artists as well that I mixed, mastered, produced, did some official remixes that I'm really proud of as well. So, been a long journey. But I started as a producer, I would say, and like recording engineer and everything. But then for the last 5 years, I fully transitioned into full-time mastering. And now I'm running a studio here in Madrid, Spain, where I live, and we work around 1,000 projects a year, just doing a lot of major label stuff and a lot of independent artists as well. So after working on all that music through all this time, I realized that there's something interesting there that is not discussed as often, mainly because I think microdynamics aren't something that is easy to perceive and hear at the beginning. I remember myself when I just started mixing. I think I was recording like some rap artists in my bedroom and stuff like that. I remember that one of my friends and like mentors that helped me out in those times, he showed me a compressor. I think we were working in Cubase at that time, and he showed me a compressor. And he's like, look, so this is how you use it. You just set it here, you put it on the vocal, you do those adjustments. Can you hear the difference? I'm like, no, I cannot hear it at all. Like, okay, let's push it further. Can you hear it now? I'm like, I don't hear anything at all. Like, I don't know, maybe he was compressing like 6, 7 dBs. I didn't hear anything. I was like, I don't understand this, what the compressor is for. This makes no sense to me. So I remember that it took me a very long time to actually be able to hear compression, even more time to understand it, okay? And I think like after now that I've been like 16, 17 years working on music every day, I started to really understand and comprehend microdynamics. So those are tiny modulations in volume. I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth now. But this is a topic that is not discussed online as much. You don't see many YouTubers throwing microdynamics videos or anything like that. If you Google it, it's barely there. Mainly because it is hard to perceive. So this workshop is advanced. I mean, it's not like something that if you're just starting out or you've been working in music for several years, you're not going to understand. You will understand and you'll see how it works. But it is advanced in the sense that you need at least medium trained ears, to be able to hear what we're going to do. Because we'll explain right now a little bit more, okay? But the issues, and this is where people are struggling, and many people, even after working in music for many years, they still don't understand like how can some of the hit songs or chart-topping records sound interesting, even if they're not using that many elements. They're usually like it's obviously not all the hit songs have few elements, and some of them, yes, they're very convoluted, but the majority of them, they're really simple. And if you analyze it, it feels like maybe they used like, I don't know, 10 tracks. So this is something I was really obsessed about. I'm like, how is that possible? And I think in acoustic, traditional like acoustic band situation, that's achievable and it's much easier. But nowadays, where like, I don't know, 70% of music comes and is generated and produced on computers, it's much more difficult. Even before diving into microdynamics, the first thing that you have to know is that microdynamics is not everything. It's not the complete solution, okay? It's just one element. Before even diving into microdynamics, the song needs to have an intentional arrangement, good emotional engagement, so it's actually transmitting whatever feelings it wants to convey. A lot of producers focus on the feel, not just virtuosity, okay? Because, like, obviously, if you're an amazing guitar player, complexity can sometimes get in the way of connection. So you kind of have to like downsize your virtuosity and your skills to focus on the feel and what you're trying to convey, right, emotionally, or in terms of what's the topic of the song, etc. Then high quality sound design and sound selection. I think this is also like one of the main reasons why those songs sound so interesting. Microdynamics is woven into that. We'll discuss it a little bit later. And obviously an exceptional and skilled delivery. Sometimes if you just have an amazing singer, even if you record the singer with the terrible mic and your mixing sucks, the song's still going to work, basically because the delivery is exceptional. So let's not forget that those are all things that are very, very important. But after that, there's this secret ingredient that's running and connecting all of it, and it's the microdynamics. Okay, because microdynamics breathe life into every note, every beat, every phrase, and they intersect with every stage. Okay, starting from production and ending with mastering. So how the synth is played, how the synth is programmed, how is it automated, how is modulated, how, I don't know, the vocal is shaped in the mix, how does the vocal interact with other elements in the instrumental, right, with the instrumental, how is your final limiter working, is it compressing, what's the like rate at which it's compressing in terms of milliseconds, in terms of what groove are you creating, okay? So microdynamics, they're the reason why a minimal track with a few elements can hit much harder than a busy one if adjusted properly. Like the impact and the sensation of hugeness can be even bigger. Groove hypnotic, like whenever you're feeling a song and you're hearing a song and it makes your head move, microdynamics is crucial part of that. And I think in music it is very, very, very important. Okay. It also, microdynamics, if you adjust them right, makes a drop hit right. It's just a long list of things. So they're not just barely technical, they're also emotional, because if you craft that microdynamic balance right, man, it uplifts and improves the song by a lot. Obviously, if in first you have all those first elements and key points that I mentioned, okay, we're not going to make the other thing unimportant. It is actually very important. Microdynamics are everywhere, and if you know where to listen, you can actually make pretty interesting adjustments. So what is microdynamics? Microdynamics, this is like the official the official way of describing it. Microdynamics refer to subtle, small-scale changes in volume and intensity within a specific sound or throughout an entire song. Okay, so I think that's pretty easy to understand. It encompasses nuanced variations in loudness that occur from moment to moment and across the full frequency spectrum. So here I just added a little screenshot from spectral layers that I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to change the screen really quickly, just so you can understand what I am going to refer. Look, so this is a song, right? And this is a spectrogram. This is a way of representing a song and visualizing all the harmonics and all the frequencies and the intensities of each individual sound and how the elements intersect with each other, etc. Right? So by using spectral layers, it's actually pretty easy to see what's going on in your song. And spectral layers is great because if you press on this little square up here, you can actually make this view 3D. And this is quite fascinating because if you make your view look like this, you can actually see what is happening on a microdynamic level throughout the whole song. What is this useful for? I think this is useful, first of all, just to understand exactly what's going on in your song. Let me try to zoom in maybe a little bit on the lows. Let's see. So for example, can you see this straight line here? Most likely this is a kick. And if you take a look at the wave, you can see that this is exactly where the attack of the kick comes, right? And usually how are the kicks made? You start at maybe like third or fourth octave, and then you pitch it down like a sine wave. And it creates this like little whoop, right? And then this kick, as you can see, it is also interacting, or it's like being overlaid with a bass note. So in this specific song, this bass note is an 808. So you can see the kick comes here, and here's an 808. And what can you notice? So what is exactly you can notice here? You see there's a little gap here between the kick and the 808. Okay, can you see it here? Exactly. This is phase cancellation. So just by analyzing the song, you can see that the kick and 808, the sidechain between them is not 100% right. So it creates this little gap that is also easily to identify here on the actual wave. You see, right? Okay. So what else is this showing us? For example, this here. Let's listen to what the song is. Okay. So 808. See all this space. Hat. Look how it sounds. Okay. Another little hat, and then there's a clap, right? And this clap here. This spectrogram is amazing to visualize how sounds are made. Take a look at this. You can see that the clap lasts longer. It like here, see? It lasts longer around 2K, 3K. And if you analyze like any other 909 clap or 808 clap, this is usually what you're going to see. Exactly the same image, just out of curiosity. Okay? This is what makes this shape and the length of each frequency is what makes this clap sound a certain way. Okay? And what is the clap made of? We can divide the clap into a transient. So it's like just this peaks here, this mountain here is the transient. And then you can see the body. And this is going to be very, very important because when addressing microdynamics, this is going to be our main focus, crafting the ideal balance between peaks and bodies through the whole frequency spectrum. So, I mean, spectral layers is amazing because imagine you see this little hill here, right? So you're like, oh my God, I don't want this hill. You can just go here and you can take it down, see? So you can just paint the sound and like, okay, I don't want this hill, but then I want this transient to be higher. See, this would consume so much time if we had to do this for each specific song. This is not going to work for this workshop. And overall, this is just a big waste of time. This is amazing when you want to shape individual sounds, I think. For example, if you have one sample and you want to correct it and apply your own adjustments, you can do it easily. When you're producing, mixing, mastering, this is definitely not the best way of doing it. So when we're working in our DAW, we're going to use plugins that will make our life much, much easier, okay? But Another thing that is important for you to notice here and to take a look at is the way and how long are the transients and the bodies. And this is also very important in relationship to mastering and loudness. Why? Because, as you can see by the shape of the wave, we are limited, like our container, container that has the file, the audio inside, it's limited by a certain volume. We cannot surpass 0 dB, okay? Those 0 dB are usually limited, the threshold is set by a limiter or by a clipper, okay? So we cannot surpass 0 dB. And the way that those peaks and bodies are fed into the limiter is going to change our perception of groove, because the limiter is a compressor, and it's also going to change our perception of loudness and also the LUFS final levels. This is very important. I think some people don't pay that much attention to it as much as they should. Let me explain. Because look, if you zoom out, what are the highest frequencies in the whole song? The lows, right? So compare those mountains here from the 808, from the kick, to the hats, to the clap. As you can see, the difference is huge in terms of volume. Those hills are much higher. And the low end and the low mids, see, like around, we still go all the way till 2K almost, where the loudest signals are coming from. All this area is going to trigger our limiter during 90% of the duration of the whole song. And usually what happens, if you take a look at the limiter and you see exactly where it is compressing, it's usually the kick, the bass, the snare, and maybe something else if you're compressing too much or you didn't shape or clip your sounds properly during the mixing stage. Okay, so that's just very important because the limiter acts as a compressor, but it's not multiband in majority of cases. It is just a compressor with ratio 100. So depending on the amount of transients and bodies and the relationship between the peak and the body, the whole song will have a certain movement or certain sensation. Okay, so if your low end is completely out of control, it's just like a big fat sausage, you limit that song and you'll lose absolutely all groove. You'll just hear no dynamics at all. Or when the bass comes in, suddenly the whole volume of the song drops. That's a very, very common mistake. And it comes from, those uncontrolled microdynamics on the lows. So just stuff that is interesting to mention. But anyway, now that you understand a little bit better, at least how, the peaks are interacting with our plugins and how to visualize the relationship between the peak and bodies, let's continue a little bit with the theoretical part. So again, microdynamics refers to subtle small-scale changes in volume intensity within a specific sound or throughout the entire song. Then we'll show exactly how to sculpt this in the DAW. But this is also related to the same topic. Nowadays, most top engineers work fully in the box. Okay, and this is reality. You will see many engineers having big racks of analog equipment. Doesn't mean that they use it, okay? Or at least doesn't mean that they use it all the time. Specifically, if they have a lot of work, the majority of people, and at least like the professionals that I'm surrounded by, and also some of my idols, like when talking to them, they're fully in the box. Maybe like 1 out of 10 songs, they throw it through a very specific boutique analog hardware that they have, but the majority are in the box. And when you hear those mixes, it doesn't sound in the box. It just sounds like it's a normal, regular, great sounding song. Again, be careful with this because I'm not saying that analog equipment is useless. Absolutely. Some of it sounds great. During recording, it's impossible not to use it, and you should. But during mixing and mastering, it's not necessary. You can use it, but you can achieve the exact same effect and no one will realize that your mix or master are made in the box if you understand what microdynamic variations that gear adds and knowing how to recreate that. Okay, and this is a very complex topic, and we'll not have enough time to discuss it through the whole call. But just keep in mind that nowadays, 2025, you don't need a 10K compressor. You can have it if you want, and I would love to have one. If it's something I want to buy, that's fine. Okay, but you can sound greatly without having any of that. So how do those engineers get that analog feel? Sometimes those engineers don't even speak about microdynamics. They don't even discuss them because they do it unintentionally. Okay, they don't even think about that concept, basically because they just go with the feel and what they perceive as right. And many of them, especially the ones that have been working forever, they know how the gear should sound, and they recreate that sensation, sometimes almost unintentionally. Okay, so analog gear is like cheating, basically, but you can achieve the exact same thing in the box if you know how. What are the most common signs that your microdynamics need help? Here we go. So productions or ideas are great. That's the most important thing. But the song still sounds a little bit boring. Okay, it feels like something is missing. Many people, what they do is whenever that happens, they try adding more layers, adding more elements, adding more background textures and things to make their music, engaging or more dynamic or more interesting. But that's not the ideal case. That's not what you should be doing. In other scenarios, your tracks sound good, but not quite finished. Something is missing, and even many professionals that have been working in it for more than 10 years, they still encounter that problem, because they're like, oh, then I just have to send it, for mastering because they have, I don't know, a Fairchild compressor, and then it will sound finished. Yes, because Fairchild compressor will impart and imprint a certain tone and will apply some of those microdynamic things that we're going to discuss, those little subtleties and randomizations and variations that will make it sound good, but you don't need one if you know how to recreate it in the box. Your mixes have great balance, but you struggle to achieve loud and dynamic masters. Okay, so this is also super common. If your microdynamics in like on the whole frequency spectrum are not right, you will not achieve a loud and dynamic master at the same time. Some people think that you cannot achieve a loud master without squashing and taking the life out of dynamics. That's not true. You can do it, but you have to know exactly how those peaks and bodies are interacting with your final limiter. Okay, so yes, there is a way of doing stuff loud and dynamic. Okay, let's continue. So microdynamic work begins at the earliest stage: production, mixing, and mastering. Okay, so in all the three stages, we will apply some microdynamic adjustments, creative, decisions. It's all related. In some scenarios where microdynamics are not thought about during production, you can, create those adjustments and dynamic controls and variations during the mixing stage, okay, and during mastering as well. But obviously, if you start thinking about it even unconsciously and you generate those variations starting from early stage, you will get a much better result outcome. So here are just some ideas for you, in terms of production. I see Adrian saying the best microdynamics come from good musicians. Absolutely, 100%. But if you are making music in the computer without, playing the guitar, then it's not as easy. Okay. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's very important to note that microdynamics, they are made, they're created by musicians in band scenarios, okay? But if you're doing stuff in the computer purely, that's a little bit different, okay? So on the production stage, it comes from intelligent sound design. We'll show a little bit of that right now in the example I prepared for you. Sound selection and arrangement, obviously layering, not excessive, so you have to be very careful of not applying too many layers, mainly because like sound selection is more important than just layering 5 claps on top. It's much better to find one clap that works instead of adding 5 claps on top and they all cancel each other out and just creates a mess. Envelope shaping, modulation, velocity variation, that's like the easiest one. Okay, MPE after touch, and also something that I forgot to add here, some groove automation, humanization. Okay, so this is just like the basic production things that all of you have to be applying at this stage, and I'll show you some tricks in the next example. Then in terms of mixing, here are some of the microdynamic techniques that we will be using. Full spectrum transient shaping. This is something that I relate with transient coherence. That's all the way down here, because I think some of the main mistakes that I hear when mastering songs by other professionals, that sometimes they do not think about how transients between different elements interact with each other. So for example, if you have a drum kit, you'll have a kick, a snare, a hat, right? Imagine like just 3 elements. So when the song, that's something I realized, from my experience. Maybe it is not something that doesn't work like absolutely all the time, but in the majority of cases, you have to think about the transient coherence between those elements. So if your kick has, I don't know, how can I word this? If your kick has +2 like dB of transient, and then your snare has +4 dB of transient, and your hat has -5 dB of transient. dB is just like an imaginary term, doesn't mean I'm measuring levels, okay? It's just like the way it hits and the strength of it, it will feel unbalanced, You have to basically try to work on that transient coherence, so the transient from the kick, the transient from the snare, and the transient from the hat, they're more or less in the same area, okay, in terms of sensation, not levels, okay, sensation in terms of loudness, in terms of how it hits. This is very important. Then multiband resonant body control. What is that? This is where the majority of problems such as muddiness or harshness come. So when you hear a song that feels muddy, it is not from the transients. Usually it's because the resonant body of a certain sound, so for example a snare, it resonates strongly and for too long, and that's what generates that muddiness sensation. From a bass guitar, for example, a bass guitar, if it's a bass playing, it feels muddy. It's not because the bodies are thin. It's probably the opposite. You're missing some transients, and the bodies are too high or unstable, or they are too long. All of that is controlled by regular compression or multiband resonant body control that usually you can apply. In my case, I love using dynamic EQs, to control and to level all those frequencies. Then creating groove and movement. Again, dynamic EQ for this is amazing. Okay, basically because what you can do, you can steal some of the movement from one area, apply it to another. You can generate glue and cohesion between different elements or full groups. Mid-side modulation, but sidechain reactors is the similar thing. I'm going to show you right away now how to do this in Ableton. You can use, for example, Saturn as dynamic saturation to generate groove, movement, and those microdynamic thingies, that will excite you. You can create imperfections and randomizations for analog feel. How can you do that? Usually tape emulations, it's the first thing you're going to reach for, because they will create subtle differences between the left and right channel. Okay, some phase imperfections, wall flutter, that's imperfections in terms of pitch, randomized. All of that makes sounds very, very interesting. Okay, and that's just like much more that we can talk about, but just so you can get a quick idea. And during mastering, this is like what I'm doing my whole day, all day. This is where we get like really creative, because in mastering we also are aiming for a certain loudness level, and in order to reach a certain loudness level while still sounding dynamic, interesting, not squashed, or sluggish, we have to work on multi-band peak and body control for transparent and loud limiting, parallel processing for movement, wideness, loudness, again, mid-side automation, dynamic control, not only on the mid channel, but also on the side channel. And what is the relationship between the peaks on the mids and the peaks on the sides? Something not many people think about. Strategic automation for impact and dynamic contrast. So between different parts, maybe in some cases you need to boost like the peaks of the presence, and other parts you have to compress the peaks so that can generate, or the bodies that can generate the muddy sensation, depending on how the song flows, etc. Stealing movement to generate groove and coherence. So for example, if the groove of your low end is right, the relationship between the kick and the bass is great, and there's some movement, you can steal the movement from that area and apply it to the highs, so creating a song that just feels like one, and everything is just like, moving and grooving together. Sometimes this is not done by compression, it's done by expansion using dynamic EQs. Okay, so all those type of tricks are really, really cool. Then low-end resonant body control for loudness, and this is exactly what I was talking about when I was showing the spectral layers. Okay, if your bodies are too loud and too long, they will be triggering your limiter 90% of the time, and you will just not be able to create a loud master. Okay, so for example, here, this is in SpecCraft, is a plugin that I don't use very often, but it is just very, very easy to see exactly what I'm talking about. Imagine that this yellow line is your threshold, is your limiter. Okay, imagine that this is your limiter. And then you have some frequencies that are poking out. And as you can see in this case, for example, in this song, this is a song I was mastering this morning, the vocal was super loud. And you can see that the vocal is even louder than the lows. And those two harmonics were poking out a little bit too much. And when this happened, what is a limiter? A limiter is a compressor. Is it a multiband compressor? No, it's not. Whenever the limiter is triggered by one frequency, it compresses the whole song. You understand? So all those modulations, so when, for example, if I just compressed, I limited the song as it is, whenever the vocal hit this specific note, the whole song would go down in volume. Is that dynamically correct? Maybe not, maybe yes. Okay, so this is where you have to decide what are you trying to achieve with it. So this is all thing, food for thought, basically. I hope you find this interesting. Okay, so yeah, some of the most common mastering issues actually come from microdynamics deficiencies. Okay, so if you're trying to sound loud and dynamic at the same time, the limiter is not the real problem. It's the way the transients and bodies trigger it. Just think about this. Okay, let's talk. let's do some practical work. I've been talking for too long, but I think it was important to introduce you the problem and explain you how my vision around this. Okay, so I opened this Ableton session, and for this specific example, I prepared a very kind of boring type of production. I did like a house, house loop, mainly because house music is pretty linear and it doesn't rely on too many elements. So in this case, I just added a kick, a clap, open hat, a closed hat, and a bass. And now I can switch. You can see me switching from bass dynamic to bass flat. All the microdynamic processes that I prepared, I'm going to show you exactly how everything is done, just with one button. Okay, so now with one button, all the plugins that I added are deactivated, all the processes are off, and you will be able to hear the difference of just a regular house loop without anything at all, just the kick, the clap, the open hat, the closed hat, and the bass, and the track with all the same elements, but with some microdynamic processes that we can apply during production. We will not be able to dive deep into mixing and mastering on this specific session because of the time limits, okay? But this is something that you can already start integrating into your workflow. And again, this is not applied to house music only. This is applied to absolutely every genre. Just get the techniques and use it for your own productions. Doesn't matter. Okay, let's listen to the bass flat version. I mean, just like the flat version of a loop. And this is where many people get stuck. This idea is not amazing, okay? But some people have an amazing idea, and the actual loop, the production is great, but it still sounds boring. So look, this is how it would sound without anything. So see, pretty boring and flat. As you can see, there's nothing, crazy in terms of production, melodies, just, a regular loop. Now, listen, I'm going to change. I'm going to bypass I'll do AB. Listen to those microdynamic adjustments that I just activated. Listen to this. I hope you're listening in headphones or in good acoustic environments to actually hear the difference. I'll play just the dynamic version now, microdynamic adjustments, and then I'll A/B it. Look at this. Okay, so you heard the differences, right? And this is easy achievable. As you can see, I didn't add any layers. It's all this absolutely the same thing. Okay, and this is where many people get lost, because that's the way how you make music exciting, microdynamics. Let me explain without further ado. I was talking too much. Let's start working. So look, basically what I'm doing, I'm just turning off some plugins. Whenever I'm changing, this mode, I'm just I'm deactivating some plugins. For the kick, let's start with the kick. For the kick, I used Kelvin. Kelvin is just a saturator. Why I used Kelvin specifically? Because it has a very nice automatic auto gain function. So basically, if I saturate, it keeps the volume of the kick exactly the same. And in this case, you can see, if you pay close attention, that something is moving. So what is it? What knob is moving? You can see the dry wet moving randomly, because this dry wet knob, I'm not moving it, it's just moving by itself, because I'm modulating it with this LFO here. And this LFO here, it has a random waveform at this rate, and it is basically just, saturating my kick, but it's adding and removing harmonics in a little randomized way. So this is, this is an analog emulation. Okay, if you listen to this, let's look, this is without. And listen to the little differences. Cool, right? And as you can see, this is, I mean, you don't feel, I mean, obviously maybe the kick got louder, like, half dB because of the saturation. But what I want you to actually perceive is this, how every kick, every shot feels a little bit different, just a tiny bit different. Okay, how is this done in the real analog world? When you're using analog equipment, for example, a drum machine, it's different, because the oscillator that that generates the wave from the drum machine is never stable. It never resets from the beginning of the wave, at least in the old drum machines. It is always randomly, okay? It just opens an amplifier, and you have the oscillator running randomly on the background, and then it opens the amplifier. You don't know exactly at which point of the wave it's going to open the kick, So it sounds much more unstable. In this case, you can create a kick that still feels stable, because for me, for example, for techno, house music, it's very important that the kick never gets lost or it doesn't sound weird. I always want the kick to sound thick and consistent, but I still want to add a little bit of modulation, a little bit of interest to it, but I always want to keep it the same volume. I don't want velocity, or stuff like that on house kicks. That's just doesn't sound right. You want the kick always there, but you still want to make it a bit interesting. This is a tip again. If you want to do this, go even further into this analog emulation, add Kelvin, 1 Kelvin on the left channel, 1 Kelvin on the right channel, and modulate them differently. Oh, look, that confetti is right on time, perfect. Okay, that will generate dynamic saturation, and this is exactly like one of those key secrets that comes from analog equipment, because left and right channel are processed differently in analog equipment, okay? And they use different amplifiers, and those harmonics are not always going to be stable. There's going to be like slight variations between them from the left and right channel, and that's what imparts a lot of that analog feel, okay? So let's start from there. I think this is a good, interesting point. And think about this. You're still going to be kind of in phase and stuff. You're not going to generate like really crazy stereo differences, because you're just going to modulate certain harmonics. If you take a look at the imager, for example, it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be like a little tiny bit wider line. Cool. Something just, more tricks for you, just to give you some value. Then, if you move onto the clap, this is how the clap sounds by itself. Super boring. Here I added a shaper box. So see, there's like slight variation happening between the shots. What I'm doing here, shaper box is amazing for production. For mixing, not as much, okay? But for production, if you're working specifically like on certain elements like this is such a power horse. Look at this. You have reverb. So firstly, I have a tiny bit reverb, then I have more reverb, a little bit reverb, more reverb. I have noise, so I'm adding a layer of noise. And you see the fourth clap is noisier than the second or the third. Okay, so that's adding a little modulation. With all the reverb I created, all the noise, I'm syncing to 2 bars, and I'm making some of the claps wider. Hear it, right? Drive, I'm saturating one of the claps, sorry. So see, the sensation is different. And then volume. Okay, so this is for our clap, really easy. Open hat. Let's take a look at open hat. This is open hat without anything. Noise, like little phaser. Drive. Really cool, okay? If you're hearing some low, it's coming from the drive, and probably because if you're saturating high frequency content, you can generate like low frequency aliasing, basically, okay? This is really, really, really cool. Okay, so look, let's just listen to those 3 without anything off. Let me turn this off like this. Now. So if you're trying to make a house intro, 30 seconds of just drums, this already sounds interesting. Okay, that's what I'm trying to show. And then you don't need more layers. Then the closed hat is a little bit more complex. Okay, again, shaper box. As you can see, there's drive. Like a scratch effect here. Volume, pan. And then one of my favorite techniques for closed hats is applying a randomized LFO on a vocoder. This is really cool because vocoder is basically resynthesizing my hats. Let's make it like very, very obvious. This is too much. Let's just do a little bit. And you can apply this before or after shaper box, doesn't matter. When this is off, it's like torture. It's impossible to listen to that. Okay, it's like, your brain is just fried. So this is why it's very important to generate those little variations. In this case, I mean, these ones are very obvious, but you can go as soft as you need, depending on the genre. If you're using like acoustic recordings even, you can also add some of those slight variation on top of the way you're playing, etc. It's just, pretty useful. And last but not least, we're also going to add some microdynamics concepts to the bass. And this is applied during sound design. So let's compare the basses. This is the flat one. Just focus on the bass, okay? Listen to the bass. See how it's like it's alive, and this is exactly what many people spend money on buying analog gear. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna make this arpeggio, it's just going to have this life inside of it. Okay, but you can emulate something pretty similar with with plugins. So look, let's take a look what exactly I'm modulating. On this bass dynamic, I've used Serum 2. I started with rolling bass preset, and if you go all the way here to the matrix, you can see exactly the sense that I added. There's a bunch. So as you can see, there's multiple LFOs here. Let's take a look at what they're doing. And let's see what things are moving. So first, LFO 6 is modulating the filter cutoff. Just a tiny bit. So as you can see, it just opens it, but maybe like a little bit. So that's the first thing you're going to see. LFO 5 has this crazy shape. Let's see where this guy is going. LFO 5 is going to distortion wet. So I'm modulating the mix of the distortion. Distorting sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes more, sometimes less in this weird shape. Then, next on, I'm going to use LFO 4 that is modulating the fine. What is fine? The pitch. So it's changing slightly changing with this movement that you can see the note of our bass, but just a tiny bit. So it doesn't feel like out of, it's important. Okay, more things. What else we have? We have LFO 6 filter frequency. Yes, we use that one. LFO 5 distortion wet, and FX filter frequency LFO 2. Okay, last but not least, these two guys here. Amazing. This is one of my favorite modulations in Serum, note on random and note on random discrete. And this one doesn't come from the LFO. So you actually, if you want to modulate something with note on random, you have to right click on a knob or do it through the matrix. And here you have mode source and you have, where is it? Here, note on alt, note on random, note on random. Okay, so what this does? Note on random basically just gives you a random value for the knob each time a MIDI note is pressed, each time a MIDI note is triggered. So in this case, let's add note on random to drive. And as you can see, we have many notes here, right? They're very short. And by doing this, the drive knob is going crazy because for each note, it gives us a random value. And now, obviously, this is all over the place and it's jumping too crazy. I'm going to remove it, okay? Remove all modulators. I'm applying note on random here to the bend of this warp. So if you take a look at the wave, look how it's moving. Without it, if I remove this or just bypass it, let's move it. Stable. That's not how analog synthesizers work. If you're using an analog synthesizer, the wave of each note is going to be slightly different. So this is exactly what I'm emulating here. I'm going here, note on random, look at this. Now this is too crazy, right? Let's go to matrix, and here we can change the values. Right enough. Okay, and then I'm modulating with another note on random, a different one, the FM. Okay, so I'm basically applying frequency modulation from oscillator A to B here. And it's also randomized. Okay, so look, I'm just going to delete all the instruments just so you can focus on the bass. And I'm adding a tape. We'll come to this right now. But look, this is without any modulations, exactly the same notes, everything. And this is exactly where many people get stuck, because they just get to this loop and, they find a preset, a sound, and they just like, okay, the idea is good, but still there's something missing. What can I do? Add layers. No, don't do that, okay? First of all, utilize well what you have, okay? And after that, if something's missing, then you can add layers. And obviously, like composing and mixing, that's a different topic. But just some ideas for you to think about. Last but not least, I'm adding a tape. And as I mentioned before, tape, what is tape doing? So tape is creating and that sensation of pleasantness, like when the sound is pleasant, that's exactly what tape is doing. Why? Because of the tape characteristics. First of all, tape will apply some sort of spectral compression by saturating. So it saturates, but it also compresses because of the way of how saturation works. So if there's a specific peak that's standing out, the tape is going to compress and saturate that peak in first place, just because of how it works. Then you have wah flutter. Wah and flutter is going to introduce some pitch variations. So it's not just like a straight tone, like pee. It's like, and that's what makes it also sound more interesting. Another of the big reasons why there's so many vinyl fanatics out there. They're like, no, vinyl sounds better. It's like, yes, it sounds better because there's pitch variation on top of your song. So it just sounds more interesting, and like deeper and all of that things. But that's like one of the main reasons why vinyl sounds so good. Is why tape is still, like actual cassette tapes still sound like interesting, a little bit more special. Another thing that it adds, it's also differences between left and right channel. phase differences between left and right channel. So this specific plugin does it. And that's great because it just makes everything sound wider and a little bit more natural. So that's just some of the characteristics of tape. But anyway, as you can see, this is a pretty simple example. The tape is applied to the bass, only to the bass in this specific case. But you can add it to the master as well, anywhere. I mean, sometimes I add tapes almost like on every channel. Depends, because also by generating those differences between left and right channel, if they're a little bit too crazy, then everything sounds wide and everything just sounds smeared. Be careful with that. Just don't overdo it. Okay, but yeah, you can add this anywhere, basically. The adjustment is gain staging, because tapes are not supposed to work at loud levels, so usually in analog domain you're going to work around minus 24 dB or minus 18 dBFS in terms of levels. Depends on the gear. Every gear is different. Each gear, tape machine or equalizer compressor is different, has different gain needs. But in this case, -5 was enough not to saturate too much. Okay, so let's do this. I see some questions about microdynamics of the bass for mastering, etc. Let's do this pretty quick before wrapping up. So let's imagine that this is our master. So now on my master, I just have a Ableton stock limiter, just like not distorting the signal that comes into Zoom at this moment. Let's make a quick microdynamic adjustment in terms of low end and low mid control, and let's see what we can do here. So in this case, the kick and the bass are sounding well together, more or less. This is just an example I did really quick, so it's nothing like really well thought. Let's apply a low pass filter. This is multiplicity, in case you don't know about this plugin. And as you can see, this is what I mentioned at the beginning of the workshop, is that the low end frequencies are going to be the loudest in almost 99% of songs. And that's mainly because our ear doesn't hear low frequency as loud, so we have to boost them to compensate for our deafness in those frequencies, okay? But the computer doesn't have that, EQ that our ear has, if you know what I mean. So first of all, you can see that the limiter now is being triggered by the bass. It looks like the bass has some sort of peaks that are here and there, poking out here and there. So if this happens, clipper is not going to work, because bass, usually, sometimes it works. In this case, it's not going to work because bass is low frequency, so it's very slow. What can work pretty well is using a limiter for this. So first of all, let's limit our bass dynamic range overall, so we can gain a little bit extra headroom. Modern was sounding good. Perfect. So as you can see, now we stabilize the bass, okay? And it's basically just 0 star is the limit. It doesn't, it's not overflowing at any point. So now our limiter should, work better. Okay, so now it's not catching as many peaks. If you still have some peaks to catch, you can always clip them right here. As you can see, it still sounds pretty transparent. Okay, and now let's push our limiter a bit harder. Let's use unity gain so we can see exactly how far we can push it. mastering, I usually compare 13 different limiters. In this case, I'm just using Pro L2 just to find the best algorithm, the one that sounds the best. I think more or less here we good, okay? Just clips a little bit, but maybe we can fix this now. Let's try. Let's go to multiplicity. And here, as you can see, we have our kick displayed perfectly in the graph. Let's do something like this. Let's start with attack 30. Attack 30 is the minimum I will go when compressing the low end. Release slow, let's try like 500, release fast 200. And look what I'm listening to. I'm hearing the click. I'm trying to hear exactly what the kick is doing, what kind of groove it's generating, okay? In this case, it's pretty accurate. We can make it even better by, this is like all mixing, this is mastering, all the stuff that I go more in depth and other stuff. But look, let's make this wide so we can focus on a specific area. And I'm going to try focus on the attack of the kick so we can get a more precise compression. Let's listen. See, now this allows me to focus this band only on the kick, so it's not reacting to the actual bass, it's just listening like to the kick attack, and this will allow me to make a more precise compression. Off. And there you have to find it. So basically this is without. See, like in terms of volume, we still can boost like the lows. But can you hear the difference in terms of movement that we're generating? In terms of the groove, look, let's boost the highs back. Let's see if I can do it with M dynamic and B large. Oh, damn it. This is my preset here. Let's do something like this. See the difference? This is without. Exactly. Martin is doing the movements like groovy, you know, it's like bouncing, it's grooving. And at the same time, the stability of the low end is like thick, it's like stable, you know. So this is exactly what was missing before. Before it was like, you know, with all those microdynamic adjustments we did on the production states, it's like moving all weird, you know. But now it's stable, is thick, and it's also bumpy. If you can't hear it, yes, then that means you still need a little bit more training in terms of just training your ears a little bit better to be able to perceive those differences, because in those little differences is where a lot of this magic lays. And this is just applied to the low end in this case, and obviously like we have low mids, that's completely a whole new story, highs and all the stuff. Okay, so just a little summary. What I did is basically I used multiplicity is a dynamic EQ. Dynamic EQ allowed me to focus on a specific band below 200 because this is what was triggering the limiter and generating that instability in terms of the movement. Okay, so I used multiplicity to define the groove and the bounce, the pump that I felt that the song required. But I had to focus, I had to use sidechain filtering EQ. So I filtered what the dynamic EQ was hearing so it can focus only on the kick. That allowed me to ignore the bass in a way and just focus on the attack of the kick. This way, making the triggering of this band consistent. So it is not like compressing more or less depending on the note of the bass. It's listening only to the kick and it's compressing, like this area, that range only by being triggered by the kick's attack. Makes sense? You can do this with Pro Q as well, yeah, with anything as well. Then I had to adjust the attack and release times to find the groove. I had to give some space, and I wanted my kick's transient to pass through, like a little bit of the kick body as well, like maybe the first 2 cycles of the kick, the kick's wave pass through. And then I found a release that is the right exact timing. So it compresses the bass in a certain time and comes back where it was before the next kick comes in. So right in the between the kick and kick, we have the bass. I'm letting some kick pass through, just the attack, and then everything else gets a little bit compressed. And then it gets released right before the next kick comes in. So this is, what I was trying to do. That's the balance I'm looking at. You can do similar things with Pro Q. I do love multiplicity much better though. It is so much more complex. This is just like 10% of what you can achieve with multiplicity. I'm not kidding. It's the most complex dynamic EQ out there, like no joke. And then what's happening is that I was missing some low end. I was like missing that thickness. It just got lost by that compression, and now the bass wasn't feeling as big and nice. So in this case, I applied a linear phase multiband compressor, and this compressor is just nuts. This is definitely one of my favorite compressors because not only I limited, as you can see, the low end below 100 hertz. That's what basically was distorting my limiter. Not only that, I kind of did a limiting in a way. I just draw my own transfer curve here. Not only I limited those peaks, I also expanded the peaks in the bodies in a certain range. And by doing that, I compressed and expanded at the same time and just rounded the low end. So now the low end is limited and that allows me to get much louder. But at the same time, I also, whatever wasn't reaching that level, I expanded. So look at this. So if you find that movement, and then you can round it up with this and achieve really good loudness level. But anyway, I hope this this explained it a little bit better. It's just like little glimpse into mixing in terms of microdynamics and stuff that we do. But yeah, I don't use Ableton that often. When I'm mixing, I use Reaper. I'm using Ableton only for production, and since everyone's more familiar with it, I decided to use it. But yeah, thank you guys. Before you leave and we continue with the Q&A session, I recommend you to stay. I wanted to also show you what kind of services we provide here at the studio in terms of educations. If you found this interesting, all these months I was preparing a whole course about microdynamics, and today I think was perfect way of introducing it as well. In case you're interested, you'll learn exactly all the stuff that we explained, but in depth. It's much more time to apply and to analyze. I show exactly in depth how to identify, rectify microdynamic issues in mixing, production, mastering, all of it, how to get analog sound fully in the box. Also applied, to multiple genres, not only house music, rock music, pop music. We even have some bachata, like vocal mixing. Okay, so all the stuff I explained, you can you can look more in depth in the course. I explain exactly how multiplicity works, like almost 40-minute video about all like in-depth explanations, machine level details, so how to achieve loudness without compromising your dynamic integrity of the song, multiple genres, as I mentioned: pop, rock, house, techno, trap, rap, Latin music. I'm working on real world projects, proven hit songs. Some of them like have like around 10 million plays. Other ones are not so popular, but are also great songs, and they showcase exactly all the microdynamic principles that you can apply. Okay, so if you guys interested to get access to the video course and community, because we have a private Discord community, and here is the link. Okay. We're always updating it. We're doing Q&A live sessions as well, such as this one is more like production, but if you have any questions, we usually go through it, and it's always updated. And then again, if you're more focused on the low end and this microdynamics is something you're not interested in, we have a low end mastery course that I also discussed. Also has a specific private community just for the low end course. The low end mastery, we have an active community of 250 people on Discord right now. If you're curious about improving your low end, how to get real loud, if you're struggling with your LUFS levels, that's exactly what we show, how to nail your kick and bass. It's not only sidechain, there's a lot of phase involvement that we have to fix, how to get perfect translation across all devices, cars, clubs, etc., and much more. So if you're interested in how making your bass mono and wide, so mono compatible and wide, multiple genres, make your clients happy, join the private community live Q&A calls, then you can go to this link right here, the low end course. Okay, and last but not least, before jumping into Q&A, if you want something a bit more personalized, we also offer full mentoring group that we have. It's a reduced amount of spots. Right now we have around 10 people, and we don't keep it very big. So some people, when they leave, we open some spots. And in that mentoring cohort, that mentoring group, we have live calls every week where we mixing and mastering songs right there and then. And you have an active community, daily video and text feedback, so you can submit songs every day for feedback, and I send you a video or text depending on the situation. Okay, and yeah, this one is being pretty popular, so if you're interested, this is all the stuff that's included, and you are invited as well. And we have one-on-one mentoring included in that program if that's something that gets your attention. Okay, and this is the link in case you're interested. The only thing is that we just have 2 spots right now that we can, 2 empty spots. So if that's something that interests you, go to the link and enroll before May 15th, because we'll probably cover them by then. But anyway, there's many people here from the actual mentoring and from the low-end community. Thank you, all of you guys that are here as well. Thank you for donating. Okay, guys, thank you so much again. Really excited to having you all here, and yeah, let's keep in touch through Instagram or anywhere. I always answer everybody, and I'm here for the community. Thank you again for donating your hard-earned euro, 5 euros, 10 euros to the children in need, and hopefully this event was interesting for you and you learned a lot. And thank you again for all your support, buying my courses and river packs, all of that. Really appreciate it. Okay, thank you guys.